Okay, today you're going to learn the pinch method. The objectives for this project is it's a 3-hole pinch method, 3-hole pinch pot. You're going to make sure that it's a 1/4 inch thickness all the way around, has 3 holes, it's clean and finished to completion, and has 50% carving. That's what you're being graded on. So once again, it has at least 3 holes, 1/4 inch thick all the way around, cleaned and finished to completion, and 50% carving, at least 50% carving. Okay? Did I say that the holes had to be a certain size? No. Can you do more than 50%? Yes.
What do you mean by
50%. 50% carving.
that? Oh, just like a design.
Yeah. I'll explain how to do a design at the end too. Can you have more than 3 holes?
Yes.
Yes. You have to have at least 3 holes. So that's what you're being graded on. Okay, and I'll explain how you be creative at the end. Okay. So at least 3 holes, 3-hole pinch pot. Okay, we use low fire earthenware clay. There's 3 kinds of clay. There's earthenware, stoneware, and porcelain type clay. You'll learn about all that. Earthenware is a low fire clay, meaning that it fires, so it still fires to about 2,000 degrees, but on the scale of clays is on the low end. The primary color for earthenware is red clay, but we use white clay as well. Now you have to do 2 projects in white and 2 projects in red. It doesn't matter which ones you do in white, which ones you do in red. The clay will be kept on the bins there and the bins there, and they'll be out there tomorrow for you to start working. When you come in tomorrow, you can just start working right away. You'll just listen for your name for roll, and then that way you don't have to sit around and not work. When we get clay from the factory, it usually comes in a big block. And it's all been processed, been de-aired, that kind of thing. Right now, there's recycled white clay in there, so those you'll see like a tube of clay. That should be fine. Now, when you see the block of clay, you're just going to cut off a piece using a wire tool. Wire tool looks like this. It's a 2 dowel rods with a piece of wire between the two. You just use it to cut off a piece of clay. Or you can use it to cut clay in half to check it for air pockets, things like that. Okay, air is good for a clay and it's bad for a clay. How is it good for a clay? Yep, helps it dry. Dries it out so you can let it, firm it up so you can fire it and stuff, or you can carve. How is it bad for a clay? It can blow up. How can it blow up? Air bubbles. Okay, air bubbles in your clay. How does that blow up your clay though? Air expands in the kiln. Okay, so if you have a big pocket of air, it's going to expand during the heating process, and then your piece is solid, it'll just blow it apart. Okay, so you want to get rid of that. If you have the block of clay, it's been processed at the factory, so if you cut off a piece, you shouldn't see any air pockets in your clay, and you can just start working with it. Same thing on the recycled clay. Sometimes it has air pockets in it, sometimes it doesn't. If you cut it and you see an air pocket, you want to get rid of that. Okay. If there's pieces of clay in there, sometimes people will use clay and they'll put it back, and there's pieces of clay, you have to use that because I don't put clay out. You're not going to have new clay all the time, so you have to use what's in there. So you're going to put that together, and you have to condition the clay so it can be worked. Okay. To make the clay workable, we're going to wedge it. It's called wedging. Okay. It's a process of folding the clay on itself over and over and over again, so that way you can get rid of any air pockets that could be in there. Okay. So if there's clay in there and you need to wedge it, I put this together, and I'm just going to push this so you can see possibly what an air pocket looks like. Real tiny pinhole ones aren't that big of a deal. It's the big ones that mess you up. Oops. Like here, there's an air pocket there. It's a little pocket of air. Big ones like that aren't good. So what you're going to do is you're going, let's see, when I hit it, it's spread apart. There's more air pockets in there that are hidden. And you're going to wedge the clay. Now to clean the wire tools, all you do is you take your finger and you run them along here. It's not going to cut you, and take the excess clay off here. Wire tools are hanging up over there. Sometimes I'll put them on top of the bin so that we can just cut it. You don't have to come back and forth. Do not leave the wire tools inside the bin. Cut off a piece, put them back on top of the bin. Okay? Okay. So to wedge, first of all, you're going to position your hands like you're going to choke someone out. So put your hands around like this, like you're going to grab somebody around the throat and choke them out. Okay? What you can do is you put that around the clay that way. And then you're going to push with your palms, pull with your fingers. So it's push, pull, push, pull. And you can do this about 30 to 40 times. Now this is called a bull's head or dog's head wedge. There's other ways to wedge. There's like a spiral wedge method. That's a little bit more difficult to master, so this is kind of an easier one to use. Keep your hands on each side. Also, I stand up when I wedge clay. And when you wedge clay, you always want to grab more than what you're going to use. So that way you're able to control it better. Not real small pieces, but big piece, you always cut it and then use what you need to use. I stand up because it gives me better leverage. If I sit down, then you're kind of like doing it that way. So I always stand up when I'm wedging clay. And it's called a bull's head or dog's head wedge because if you do it correctly, because I'm lifting my fingers, pushing with my palms, it looks like a bull's head or a dog's head. Okay? That's how it should look when you're wedging. So you keep doing it over and over again. And then now I'm going to cut off a piece. Fine. Now normally I would put this clay back, but I've been using this as a demonstration. So I'm going to wrap it up in plastic, and you'll be using plastic in just a minute. White plastic is kept on top there, and orange plastic or red clay is on the bottom there. So you just grab yourself a piece of plastic and use it to cover your clay. Okay, first thing you do is you're going to make a ball, about an orange-sized ball of clay. The other thing I talked about briefly yesterday, if you have whatever hand you're using, the nails on that hand should be trimmed if at all possible. It makes it easier to pinch and that kind of thing. If you have long nails, you can use it, but it just gouges the clay a little bit. You can always clean your nails with the toothbrushes over there. Also remove any rings, bracelets, watches, anything that's around this area. Put it in your pocket. You don't have to take them off, but then you'll get clay on them. Okay? So put them in your pocket or in your book bag. Do not leave them on the table. They will grow legs and walk away. Okay? So any jewelry that's on your arms or hands, put it away if you don't want to get a clay on it. So you get an orange-sized ball of clay. Not a real small piece of clay, not a big one. You want something that's manageable, so an orange-sized ball of clay is good. Make it into a ball, like you're making a snowball. Those of you that never seen snow, it's just snow in a ball. Okay. Then you take your thumb, and you poke it into 3 different areas, deep into, but not all the way through, into your ball of clay. So it looks like that. Okay? No, you're not done. Okay? Now you're going to pinch using your fingers between the holes and the outside to a 1/4 inch thick. All the way around, between everywhere, to a 1/4 inch thick. Now 1/4 inch thick is about this thick right here. It's about 1/4 inch thick. Okay, everything we make in here will be a 1/4 inch thick. A 1/4 inch thick is usually the standard for clay because that way it's thick enough to where it's sturdy. It's not too thin where it's fragile, and it's not too thick where it would take a long time to dry or it would have an air pocket in it. So everything we make in here will be a 1/4 inch thick. Okay. You could take a ruler and measure 1/4 inches. Rulers over there. If you're not sure what a 1/4 inch thick is, what else could you do? Well, I think he's a little wider, a 1/4 inch. What else could you do?
Use a ruler.
You could use a ruler, that's true. What else could you do? What? You could look at it. What else could you do if you're not sure?
Ask somebody.
Who would you ask?
You.
Exactly. That's what I'm here for. If you're ever not sure about anything, you always ask me. I'll look at it and say, yeah, it's a 1/4 inch thick, or that's a little bit too thin, or that's a little too thick. Okay? Yes, so, maybe so. That's what I usually say. Okay? So always ask me if you're not sure whether it's a 1/4 inch thick. And then when you go around, smooth it with your finger, that kind of thing. Now, like I said, you want to make sure it's a 1/4 inch thick all the way around, everywhere. Now, the way you check that to make sure it's a 1/4 inch thick all the way around is you're going to put your fingers on each side of where it is a 1/4 inch thick, lightly. Then what you do is you trace your fingers around your project. If your fingers feel your fingers start spreading apart, what does that tell you?
It's not even.
It's not even, it's too thick, so you have to pinch it out. So that's how you check your project is you run your fingers, and it should be between the walls and the bottom everywhere. Normally, everybody does well on the sides. It's the same thickness all the way around on the sides, but then the bottom's really thick. So you got to pinch it out even on the bottoms and in the corners as well. Okay. Now these have been done. They've been fired. You put your fingers on each side of these and you run these around. They will not spread apart, even in the bottom, the corners, and everywhere. So I'm gonna pass this around. I want you to put your fingers down here lightly and trace them around so you can feel what it feels like between each of the walls and the bottom and everything. So you know what a 1/4 inch thick feels like. Same thing on this one. I'll pass this one around. This is a 5-hole pinch pot. You can just pass this around. You'll feel the carvings, but it's still the same thickness. Your fingers will not spread apart. Okay. So that way you can feel what a 1/4 inch thickness feels like all the way around a project. So that's what I'm grading on. Okay. So you keep doing that. Keep pinching. 1/4 inch thick between each wall, in the middle, everywhere. 1/4 inch thick. Well, you're working now. It's time to go. You're not done with your project, but you want to save it for tomorrow. The first thing you do is you can go over to the tool cart and grab a needle tool. This is a needle tool. It's a heavy gauge needle. It's 16-18 gauge. It's usually the thickness of the needle. If you know anybody with piercings and things like that, that's the thickness of it. The handle's made out of aluminum, so it doesn't rust in water. Okay, so this is the Pro Series. You're going to put your initials and your period on the bottom. Always put your initials and period on the bottom. The reason why is that the initials identify who you are, whose project it is. If you have the same initials as someone, then put a third initial or put something that identifies it as yours. I put the period because when I fire the projects in the kiln, I don't fire it according to period. I don't say, okay, I'm going to do all third periods now. I fire things according to how tall they are. So the taller things, I fire at one level. Smaller things, I fire at another level. Okay, so they're all different sizes in the kiln. So I fire them at different levels. Okay. So at the end of the period, at the end of the firing, when they're cool and I unload them, I just look on the bottom and say, oh, third period. And I'll put it on the shelf where third period is. And then when third period comes up, I'll take the stuff off the shelf, put it on the table. You'll come and get your projects and you'll take them to your spot. Okay. So identify it, initials, period. I'm going to grab a piece of plastic. I'm going to work on this tomorrow. So I'm going to wrap it completely around this. I'm going to put it on my shelf. You could also use a board, small board. These are small 10 by 10 boards. They're right there. And you can put them on top of the board as well. And then put the board on your shelf. Okay? Third period shelf will be right there. You won't have your names up there probably till Monday. Because they're still evening out the rolls and things like that. Okay? So, you come in the next day. The first thing you're going to do, open it up and check and make sure that it's yours. If it's not yours, wrap it back up, put it back on the shelf, and find yours. Okay. Then you start working on it. Pinch it all the way around. If it starts getting dry while you're working on it, then you can always take a spray bottle, mist it, and just mist it like that. Let the water soak into it. Because as soon as you take it out of the bin, the clay is going to start drying. See my hands, how they're chalky? Okay, that's because it's drying. Okay, and when you wedge it on the table or you put it on the table, it dries out the clay. Anytime it's exposed to air, it's going to start drying it out. So you want to keep it moist. If you're not sure whether it's getting too dry, then always do what? Ask me, and I can check it for you. Okay. Okay. So let's say you're pinching, and you're pinching, and you go woohoo, the pinch method, and you're pinch, and you get really thin. Okay. Now remember, we want to make this a 1/4 inch thick. So if it's really thin, it makes it fragile. And also, when you try to carve, you want to carve deep in your project, and you can carve through or break your project when you do that. So you want to keep it a 1/4 inch thick. So if it gets really thin, you can take the clay and you can fold it on itself like this. And would you blend from the edge or would you start blending from the inside?
The inside.
Inside? How many people say inside? How many people say edge? How come not everybody's voting? Oh, you guys don't want to just take the chance of having a wrong answer. Okay, you would actually do it from the edge. The reason why is because if you do it from the edge, you can push the air out that's underneath there. If you blend from the inside right here, you'll trap air in there. So you want to blend it and push it down, and that way you won't trap any air. And you just smooth it out. Sometimes when you're pinching or blending or however when you're constructing with clay, you'll see a little blister, and that's an air pocket. So if you pop it, just take a needle tool and pop it, then you can get rid of it that way. If you don't do anything, you just try to smooth it, it's just going to move around. Okay? So you just want to make sure you do pop it. Let's say you're pinching and it becomes flat. Okay? Then what you want to do is you want to tear it, fold it on itself, and then blend it again. While the clay is wet, you want to use your fingers to smooth it out. You don't want to use the sponge and water yet. You want to use the sponge and water after it has firmed up some. So always blend with your fingers, your thumb, just to smooth it out. Okay, so I've worked on this. I think I have it a 1/4 inch thick. What am I going to do next? Okay, before I carve, I think I have it a 1/4 inch thick, so what am I going to do?
Linear.
Ask me. Okay, and I will check it for you. Yes, no, maybe so. If I say yes, it's smooth, everything's smooth, it's 1/4 inch thick everywhere around, you know, you're fine, it's done, then what do you do next? Carve, right? You have to do 50% carving, but you don't want to carve yet. Okay? If you try to carve it right now, first of all, you're not going to use a needle tool to carve. Needle tool is not really a carving tool. You're going to use this tool. This tool is a combination tool. It's like a loop tool. It has like a curved end, but it has a pointy end on it, so that way it carves it deep and gives it some width to it. A needle tool is too thin, so you want to give it some depth or width to it. But if you try to carve when it's wet, it kind of bubbles up. You don't really have a lot of control with it and that kind of thing, so it's not a good time to carve. Now, clay has 3 stages. It has this plastic stage, and the plastic stage is you can make things out of it. It's very pliable. You can design it, manipulate it however you want to. Then after you let it dry, when like 15% or 20% of the water has evaporated, it becomes stiff. But it's still a little pliable, and you can still attach things to it, but it's stiff. And if you try to bend it, you bend it too much, it'll break. But there's still some moisture in there, so you could add some things to it. That's when you want to carve. That's called leather hard stage. Leather hard stage is it's stiff, it's bendable, but if you bend it too much, it'll snap. And the last stage is bone dry stage. That's when all the physical water is kind of evaporated and it's lighter and it doesn't feel cold and it's ready to be fired at that point. When it's bone dry, it's very fragile and it will break. Okay, so you want to be very careful with it. Okay, so to get it to leather hard stage, the first thing you're going to do is after it's cleaned up and I said it's fine, you're going to let it sit out to dry. Now, if there's time in the class period, you're going to let it sit out during class. So you're just going to put it in front of you like this. I would not leave it on the shelf because it's compact and there's things around it, the air doesn't circulate as well as it does out here in the open. So I would leave it out here while you're working on it. At the end of the period, when it's time to go, you want to still dry it out. So either put it on your shelf or get the board, take your project, put it on the board or on your shelf, take a piece of plastic, and you're going to cup it around it tightly. So the bottom is exposed. You're not going to wrap it all the way around. You're just going to cup it so the bottom is exposed to the wood or to your shelf. Okay. You always want your projects to dry from the bottom to the top, not from top to bottom. Okay. Bottom to the top. Okay. Come in the next day, take it off, make sure it's yours, check your initial period. See, that's one reason why you want to make sure you check your initial period at the bottom every time because you can erase them out. So you always want to recarve every day. You want to make sure you put your initials period in the bottom. Leave it uncovered. Check it. Oh, it's still kind of pliable. Leave it uncovered. Next day, that day when you put it away, cup it a little looser so a little bit more air gets to it. You come in the next day, uncover it, and then check it. If you're not sure it's leather hard, what do you do? Ask me, and I'll check it for you. I'll say, no, it needs to dry a little bit more. Usually about 3 days. 3 to 4 days it takes for it to dry, if taking it off on and off to get to leather hard. Okay, then you start carving your design. Now your design can be linear, can be somewhat abstract. What I mean by abstract is not just blah blah blah, taking a tool, or it means it hits controlled chaos basically. So you want to make sure you have a design that's recognizable or not necessarily recognizable, but it's not just taken in just like that. Okay. You can have negative carving and you can have positive carving, or you can have linear carving. Do you know the difference? What's linear carving?
Straight line.
Like lines. It could be, where's the 3-hole pinch pots? Yeah. So, this has a linear design on the bottom. See, it's just lines, and they can cross and things like that. Then you have negative carving and positive carving. What's the difference between negative and positive? Okay, what did you say again? Yes. So if I want to do, I'll show you the difference here. A linear design, doing a moon, looks like this. Okay. Made the outline of a moon. Okay, now I'm going to do the same moon. Twice. Okay. This moon right here, I'm going to make negative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the moon. So it creates a negative space. Okay, like I said, this clay is too soft. So I got a negative moon. That's a negative space, right? That's negative. Positive would be if I were to take the clay from around the moon away. That would make the moon stick out. Okay? So you have linear, positive, negative. Okay? Now you can do however you want to. It doesn't matter, what shapes, designs you have, as long as it's appropriate for school. Okay? When you're carving, you don't have to know how to draw. If you want to put an image on there that's a recognizable image, you can just either print it out, and then you can put the paper on this, trace it with a pencil, and the pencil will leave a mark on the clay. Then you go back and carve the design out. So you can do it that way as well. Okay? So you don't have to be real complicated. You don't have to be, doesn't have to be recognizable as something. It's up to you. But you're going to carve your design out. Okay? At least 50%. Okay? Once you think you're done carving, make sure you clean it up. Either use a sponge or use a brush and water, and I'll show you how to use that with when you're done carving. If you think you're done carving, what do?
Come to you.
Come to me and ask me, is this done? Is this cleaned up? Is this 50%? I would say yes, no, maybe so. Maybe I say, well, that looks like it's only 30% carved. Or you need to clean this area up better. And I'll tell you what you need to do. Okay? And once it's done, then you want to I say, yeah, it's fine. It's done. Once again, you make sure your initials appear on the bottom, and you're going to make sure that you can start letting it dry. And you're going to let it dry just the same way. You don't want to leave it totally uncovered yet. You just want to cover it lightly. And then another day or two, it gets super stiff. Then you just leave it uncovered, and it dries the rest of the way until it's ready to be fired. Okay? Okay. Recap. First thing you're going to do is choose the color of clay you're going to use. You're going to cut off a piece. If it's in a block, what are you going to do?
Use the wire tool.
Right, use a wire tool, cut it up, and then do what?
Wedge it back.
And what?
Put the rest of it back.
Put the rest of it back. But you cut off a piece that you can use, and what are you going to do?
Wedge it.
Wedge it? Are you going to wedge it if it's in a block?
Make it into. Do you say make it into?
No, if it's in a block of clay inside the bin, that means it comes from the factory. Are you going to wedge it? No, because it's come from the factory. If you cut it and you see an air pocket, then of course you're going to wedge it. Anytime you cut a piece of clay and you see an air pocket in there, you have to wedge it. Okay, because you're not sure there's other air pockets in there. Same thing with the recycled clay. It may not have air pockets in it, so you don't have to wedge it. You don't have to wedge it unless there's an air pocket that you see, or if you're using a bunch of pieces of clay together to wedge your clay. Okay. Okay. Remember when you're wedging, choke like you can choke someone out. Put your hands on each side. You're gonna push with your palms, pull your fingers, doing a dog's head wedge. How many times do you do that?
30 or 40.
30, 40 times. Then you cut it in half. Check it for air pockets. Then you're gonna grab a piece of clay. How big does clay have to be? Orange-sized ball of clay. Okay. Make it into a ball. How many holes are you gonna poke into it? At least 3. Okay. Then you're gonna pinch it to how thick? Quarter inch. If you don't know what a quarter inch is, what are you gonna do? Ask me. Okay. Then you pinch it to a quarter inch. You're done working for the day. You want to save it. You want to do it. Work on it tomorrow. What's the first thing you're gonna do? Put the plastic on it.
Carve your initials.
Initials and
Period.
period. Initials and period first. Always initials and period first. Then wrap it tight with plastic all the way around. You come in the next day, you grab the project. What's the first thing you're going to do? Make sure it's yours. Look at the bottom. Make sure it's your initials and your period before you start working on it. I have several times where people have been absent. They come in the next day to work on it and they say, Mr. Newland, somebody stole mine. And nobody didn't steal it. Somebody started working on it because they thought it was theirs. So then that person's project's someplace else on the shelf. Once you have your names up there, it won't be a problem for the next 3 or 4 days. You're not going to have your name up there, so you got to make sure that you keep an eye on your project and make sure you put your initials and period on there. Okay, you work on it, you make a 1/4 inch thick all the way around, you think you're done, what do you do? Ask me, and I'll check it, say yes, no, maybe so. Okay, if you're done, you're going to start letting it dry out. So what are you going to do?
Wait, what?
Make it tight.
Okay, you're going to let it dry out, what are you going to do? You're done. I said yes, it's finished, it's 1/4 inch thick, it's smooth, everything's fine. You're going to do what next?
Wrap it up.
Okay, you can wrap it up, but if you want to start letting it dry out, right? So,
Leave it on the table.
Right, leave it on the table, but if you're ready to go for the day, how are you going to wrap it?
Make it tight, but open on the bottom.
Cup it, but make sure the open's on the bottom. Come in the next day, check it, leave it unwrapped. During class, leave it unwrapped. Just don't leave it cupped on your shelf unless it's not going to dry out as quickly. Leave it, and then before you leave, cup it a little looser, let it dry until it gets stiff enough to carve. How stiff does it have to be?
Leather.
Leather hard. If you don't know what leather hard is, what do you do?
Yes.
Ask me. Once it's leather hard, you're going to carve into it. How much are you going to carve? 50%. Okay? Positive, negative, linear. Okay? If you think you're done carving, what do you do? Ask me. Now, asking me all the time, that's what I want you to do, because I'm going to tell you whether you're on the right track to get the best grade possible. Okay? That's what I want you to do. Okay? Okay. So then once it's bone dry, you can turn it in to be fired. Now, to make these yours, okay? As people pinch these and they look at them, sometimes they look like faces, okay? So you could add things to it. You can add eyes, you can add a tongue, you can add features to it, you can carve features. Remember, you have to carve things because in the end, that's what I'm going to grade you on, so those objectives that I said. I've had people put like a spike in the middle here for like rings, like they can put the rings on there for like holding jewelry. Each one of these can hold jewelry, or they can make the pockets to hold change. I've had people make little lids for them so they can put things on there. I've had people make it into a shape like a heart. I've had people do it like, and some people are like very meticulous and very structured, so they want everything, perfect. I've had somebody make look like a sliced orange. So there's a lot of different ways you can make this your own. They can be flat. You can have more than 3 holes. Okay, so you can have several holes. You can, carve. Can you carve on the inside?
Yes.
Yes. Can you have more than 50% carving?
Yes.
Yes, so you can carve the whole thing if you want to. That's fine. That's up to you. If some people want to make it into shapes, like they want to make it to a heart. Well, whenever you're going to make them, if you want to make it a face, a heart, whatever, first thing you do is make sure you get a 1/4 inch thick. You have 3 holes. It's smooth and finished, so it's all the right thickness. Then you can form it by just pushing on the clay to get your shape like of a heart or something. Okay? But don't try to make it into a heart first and then try to pinch it 1/4 inch thick all the way around. Always do that first, and you can manipulate the clay later. Okay? If you need any help on a design, then ask me. If you're not sure, I really want to turn this into something, then ask me and I can show you how to do that. Okay? Last thing, any tool you use, you're going to wash off. The small tools you're going to wash off and dry and put back where they go. Spray bottles you're going to wash off. You don't have to dry them. The only thing you have to dry is the small tools. Boards you don't have to dry. If you use a board and you're done with it, wash it off. That's why I have brushes and large sponges there to wash them off. Next thing you do, your work area, you have all your tools clean. This is a hand scraper. This is used to scrape up any loose clay that's on the tables. Okay, these are hanging right over there. Make sure they're clean when you put them back. Then over here we have dustpans and brooms. Now, probably tomorrow or the next day, there'll be 2 35-gallon buckets like that one right over there. One's filled with red clay scraps and one with white clay scraps. As long as they haven't been fired, I can recycle clay. So you're going to sweep off your table. If you have same color scraps, you're going to put it in that bucket. If you and a person that's sitting next to you are working together, and one's working on red clay, one's working on white clay, and you clean the whole area up and you sweep off the clay and it's all mixed, then just throw it in the trash. But don't throw any particular, like if you use all white clay, don't put that in the trash. We can recycle clay. Okay, just hang up right there. Go to the sink. Grab a large sponge. You're going to wipe your area that you worked at. Okay. You wiped it, you're not done. You still have a clean side. Turn over, wipe one more time. If you use red clay, you might have to do this twice. Okay? And this will dry. Go back, you're still not done. Rinse your sponge out. And place it back here. You don't want to grab a dirty sponge, don't leave a dirty sponge for someone else. If, let's say, you've started working on white clay at the beginning of the period and you're just finishing up and you're done, so you've cleaned your area, but now you want to work in red clay. Well, you can't wedge or anything on the wet wood because it's going to stick, the clay's going to stick. So just grab a large board, one large square board, just put it there and you can work on top of that. And when you're done, at the end of the period, just wipe that board, put that board back until this dries. Okay? Any questions on this project? Tomorrow when you come in, you can start working right away. You don't have to wait for me. Just listen for your name when I call roll. That's the way it works on studio days. You just come in and just start working right away. Hang your book bags up, take your jewelry up or in your pockets, that kind of stuff, and just start working right away. If you get stuck on something, then just call me. Okay, I gave the demonstration. I showed you what you need to do, explain what the objectives are. I made it look easy because it is easy to me. Okay, to you, it's not going to be as easy. When you wedge for the first time, it's going to be difficult. It's going to go all over the place. I'm just going to remind you to have your hands in the right position, make sure you're not pushing too hard, that kind of thing. When you start pinching the first time, it seems easy, and I make it look easy because that's my job to make it look easy. But don't get frustrated, just keep working on it. Also, don't get married to your projects. Like, this is my first pinch pod, I don't want to give it up. If it's getting too ratty, then recycle it, do it over again. That's fine. You can do things over again. That's how way you get better. If you have a perfect one right away and you're great at that, then that's fine. Then make an extra one until you get the next assignment. Now, when I give you the quilt pod on Friday, then you can work on the pinch pod or quilt pod on Monday. When I give you the bowl on Tuesday, then you can go work on that one instead. And then when I give you the box, you can do that way. So that way, you don't have to do them in order. You don't have to do pinch, coil, drape, score stuff. Okay? Have a good day.